My name is Oudsema. I'm the Curator of Arts Education at Meijer Gardens and Sculpture Park. And I want to talk about how to look at art. Everybody can look at art. Sometimes it's a little bit tricky to have a really deep connection or to make an interpretation. So I have 5 different questions that I always ask myself when I'm looking at different pieces of artwork. And the first one is I look at it and I ask myself, what's going on? So here, if we're looking at the Edgar Degas dancer looking at the sole of her foot, I notice there's a woman, and I can see that she has a feminine shape and that she is holding up her foot to take a look at it. Okay, well, then next step would be to look at the title and see if that gives you any clues to the interpretation. So the title, and you can always find that on a label, which is always nearby, is Dancer Looking at the Sole of Her Right Foot. Well, that's a very literal title, and that's exactly what she's doing. Well, I just figured that out by looking at it, so not super helpful with interpretation here, per se. And then the next thing I do is to think about the color, the shape, the textures, the lines, and see if those are telling me anything about the piece. So when I'm looking at this piece, I see some beautiful texture. It looks as though Edgar Degas started with clay and sculpted this lady first, and then cast it in bronze. And we can see the marks of that texture of the clay. So it looks like a human figure, but it doesn't look like someone I'd like to see walking down the street towards me because of the texture of the piece. And it's, I'll talk a little bit more about that texture in a little bit. So the next question, 4th question, would be, does a medium tell me anything about it? And medium is a term that we used for the material that the sculpture is made out of. So here, this one is made out of bronze, which is a material that a lot of artists use to cast fine art. And so something that we would put on a pedestal and admire and think about. Before that, we know that the artist was using clay. So the material of bronze elevates the status of this piece that's fairly small to a fine art, and it makes it more permanent. So it's going to stick around for a really long time. So that's important. And then finally, I'll ask myself, does the historical context give me any clues to what this piece might be about? And you don't have to be an art historian to use Google to do a little bit of searching if you don't already have some knowledge on the historical context. So I'm looking at the date here, and it was made in 1895 to 1911, right around the turn of the century there. And I happen to know that the Industrial Revolution took place a little bit before this. And so the art world changed. What people were making changed. Before this time, artists were capturing portraiture. They were idealizing and making things very realistic as possible, and as idealized as possible, perhaps. So with the invention of photography and mass production, artists no longer needed to do that. So instead, they were able to think about people and the human condition in a different way. And in this example, she is no longer idealized. You can see that she's a woman, but she's contorted in a way that's not necessarily idealized. In fact, it's like a snapshot. And since photography came to be, not only could people be captured in a really realistic way, but we started to see snapshots of what people were doing every day. She's no longer sitting here in her gown being portrayed as an idealized person. She's doing something that one might do on any given day. So rather than trying to capture the facial beauty or the symmetry in her body, Degas instead is probably trying to capture the essence of a woman or someone doing something every day and how important that can be to us rather than just those idealized moments. So then I would take those 5 questions I asked and kind of put that all together and think about what that means to me. Do I connect with this woman? I stub my toe occasionally, or if I were working out or dancing, I might stretch. So this really feels like a person from a different time period from when I was living that I can connect with on a different level. And so I find a nice connection with that piece through those 5 questions. Those 5 questions can be tools that you can use anywhere you go when you're looking at artwork, whether it be a painting, a sculpture, or even a play or a movie. I'll apply it to those things as well sometimes. And do know that those first 4 questions take no prior knowledge of art at all. So therefore anyone can look at art and make their own interpretation. And then if you're interested in more, that historical context is just a fingertips away on your computer to find that out. And you can always email your local art historian and they'd be happy to share some information as well. Thank you.